Welcome to the programme. Today we're going to talk to another of the EY Entrepreneurs of the Year, one of the winners certainly, this time in the high-tech industry category. I'm delighted to welcome the founder and CEO of Dectris, Brönnimann, to the studio. First of all, what exactly does your company do?
We are designing and fabricating high-performance X-ray cameras. And these cameras are used for applications in the industrial field, in the scientific field, and also in the medical field.
So these aren't the kind of X-ray machines that you and I would have encountered at the dentists or at the doctors?
They look very similar, form factor, maybe a little bit different, but they look quite similar. And but they are more optimized for high-performance applications, so very demanding applications which need very high frame rates. So our cameras, they do almost 10,000 images per second, and that's what many of our scientific applications require.
So what are these applications?
The most important application is coming from the life science area. And this is basically the structure determination of very complicated molecules. You can imagine the X-ray, the combination of X-ray, an X-ray beam and the camera like a huge microscope. And by shining the X-rays onto these very tiny samples from researchers, you can basically determine the structure of the sample. Could be a protein, and with this method you can determine the spatial structure, the double helix of a protein very, very precisely.
Okay, so you're kind of taking pictures of incredibly tiny things. How does that impact life as we know it?
So a very good example is from 2 years ago during the Olympic Games. There was the Zika virus in Brazil. And basically, there was no vaccine available. It harmed pregnant women. And so research groups from all over the world were actually very, very heavily involved into determining the structure, the functionality of this virus. And with our camera, a French research group actually could determine the spatial structure of this Zika virus, which then finally led into the development of a vaccine against this Zika virus.
Okay, so these are very real applications.
Very, very important.
And mostly
yes.
in life sciences and medical
mostly
worlds.
in life science, mostly in life science. So you can imagine, there are about 100,000 of proteins in our body, and over the years, every year, about 10,000 or 15,000 of new structures of such proteins are determined. And last year, half of all the protein structures worldwide were determined with our cameras. So that's a pretty good record. So it's really, we are very dominant in this field of protein structure determination for pharmaceutical research with our cameras.
Let's talk a bit more about the company Dectris itself. I mean, where did you come from? I mean, how was it started?
It's a little bit typical Swiss example. So I worked at the Swiss Research Institute at PSI, and PSI does a certain part of their research, PSI meaning Paul Scherrer Institute in Villingen, and they're doing a part of their research is fundamental research. So these are, for example, experiments at CERN. This large accelerator at CERN, the LHC, and one group was developing new detectors to determine the collision fragments at this accelerator. And I basically worked together with them next door, and I took the same technology as they developed for CERN for these X-ray application. Because we also at PSI, we have such a basically an X-ray machine which is actually used for the kind of research I described before.
Okay, but what made you want to kind of leave that area of research and actually start a business?
Yeah, that was, of course, I would say, kind of a very important decision at the age of 40 to decide, to give up a position, as a group leader, actually, at a team of 4 or 5 people, every physicist dreaming of a research team. And I decided actually to give that position up and really try to commercialize this development, which we had done at PSI over the time. Yes.
Did that feel like a gamble at the time?
I mean, it was, of course, kind of a risk, but I was convinced that it would really work out. And there I took my chances. I had to quit my job, with a house and a family, and tell my wife I'm starting my company. But I was really convinced that it will work because I really saw a market for our detectors.
Would you describe yourself as a risk taker then?
Yeah, I think you need to take some risk in life. I mean, if you want to gain something, you have to take some risk, of course. But you should be convinced that it works. And of course, you should also have the skills, to make sure to make it happen.
You're not afraid to fail then? I mean, was that part of your thinking? I mean, was there any kind of plan B if this didn't work for you?
Actually, the one saying was, from the former director, he said, we will cap all bridges. And actually it was, I think, a very important decision to know that there is no real plan B. So you cannot just go back, or it's quite difficult to just go back, which actually forced myself to really focus on bringing up this company and make it successful, and not, having this kind of 50% fallback solution. And I think it was very, very important for the growth of the company.
So it really helped focus your plan A,
absolutely.
And to make sure
to really focus on plan A. Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me where your business is now. I mean, how many people do you employ in Switzerland?
So we are in Switzerland 110. We started a company, a daughter company in the US, which is still 3-4 people working service and
doing the same
sales.
thing.
Yeah, of course, for service for our cameras, for the installed base, and of course also helping in the sales. And so we're a company, which is very much research based. So we have more than half of the employees have a PhD or are engineers, because this is really very heavy into electronics design, software development, product development in general. And so we're very much also R&D focused company.
So you have your headquarters here in Switzerland.
Yes.
You also have a base in the United States. Where is your kind of core market then?
The core market is all over the world. So we were selling from the beginning to customers first customers was in the US, many to follow in Asia. We have kind of 2 businesses. We have a direct business where we sell to large research institutes the cameras directly. And then we have also an OEM business where we sell our cameras to industrial companies, which then integrate our X-ray cameras in their analytical apparatus.
Okay.
And yeah.
I mean, how did you start then in Switzerland? I mean, would you say that Switzerland is a good place for entrepreneurs and to start a business like this?
I think it's a very good place. First of all, we have a really pool of talents. We have research institute where we do great.
I imagine that's a key part, though. The skill base is very key for your particular business in comparison to maybe some of the other winners of this award. Absolutely.
I mean, this is very important. The research institutes which we have, PSI, also ETH Zurich, ETH Lausanne, and then of course you need first of all the people, for the developments. but you also need to understand your customers, the applications which you do with your cameras. And so we had always a very strong connection to this Paul Scherrer Institute, where also we had a lot of applications going on with our camera. So very, very important.
And what about the investor side of things? I mean, did you find a lot of interest here in Switzerland, or what are the challenges there?
We have quite a lot of interest, but I have to say, you know, we were in the lucky position that we tried very hard to sell first products very, very early on after the foundation of the company. And so we were actually we were actually right from the beginning, we were profitable.
Oh,
and
wow.
so we were not basically dependent on investors. And still, we don't have investors in the company.
At all?
At all, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's incredibly rare, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool, of course, because it means you're independent. It's also, of course, that we get offers. You know, we're looking, of course, into these things. But but first of all, it means that you're independent and you can have kind of also a long-term vision. You know, where you want to bring the company with the people which are involved. And that's very exciting, you know.
Okay, what if another big company came along, though, and perhaps wanted to buy your business, then would that be of interest to you?
Yeah, we would talk to them, of course. I mean, it would always be in connection, you know, with applications, with businesses we would do with this company. And I mean, it's clear, you know, in the future when we look into new areas, you know, it is. I would not exclude that. I mean, you should never say never, but it's something where we also can look whether it really fits, you know, to our needs.
So you're not looking out for this per se, and do you feel therefore that you can grow yourselves? You have a growth plan.
Yeah, we have a growth plan. I mean, so far we have been growing from 4 to 110, which worked out really well. And of course, this growth, this is an organic growth. It's a little bit slower than if you just put in a lot of money.
This is over 12 years, right?
Over 12 years, so it means, you know, 10, 15 people per year more, and which is in the beginning quite a lot, you know. But I would say it's still, I mean, it's still moderate if you compare to maybe Silicon Valley, where you have much more aggressive plans. But I mean, this is also, I would say, it's also really much more sustainable growth, you know, where you want to really make sure that the company and the organization is really solid, and from a very solid point of view, you try to grow into new fields.
So where do you see your company growing in the next 12 years then?
So, I mean, we want to grow further. There's no question. We have a lot of opportunity with this technology. So one field we're looking at right now is electron microscopy. This is kind of a complementary method to the X-ray crystallography, which we're currently doing. Very, very similar end customer. They're also interested in materials, in structures of biological samples. But a little bit a different method for the different apparatus, an electron microscope, and this is actually where we are really investing a lot now from the R&D point of view.
And this is actually a very key area for Switzerland. The Nobel Prize winners from Switzerland in this very field.
Absolutely. Last year, yes, the Nobel Prize winner was from Switzerland, from Neuchâtel, I believe. And so this is cryo-EM, and this is really a very, very important field for us.
And you think that there's a lot of growth there in the future then?
I think there are a lot of opportunities because this field is still growing. It is, you know, for example, take semiconductor industry, very, very important part of the defect analysis in semiconductor industry. So that's for sure it's a growth area where we could enter.
I want to know, I mean, we've spoken about your business, we've spoken about your background, but I want to know why you think the judges from the EY Entrepreneur of the Year chose you as their winner.
I mean, first of all, first of all, I'm quite kind of competitive. So let's say if you participate in such a event, then you want to do your best, you know. But I think what really convinced them is that a little bit typical story, you know, from in a country like Switzerland, where we are very strong in fundamental research. We invest a lot in education, in research. And the story, you know, of investing into research and then having a startup and then finally having a company which can offer, you know, jobs to people is kind of the typical Swiss story. And I think, you know, in these 12 years, I could also convince them that we are a very mature company, which is on a solid ground, and I think most important, we have a lot of opportunities to come.
Christian Brönnimann, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.